Where am I? Wasn't I just stuck in a time loop? The loop had gone on for so long that the world around Ethan Cole felt both familiar and alien. It took him a moment to place the scene, a chilling recognition dawning on him. This was the street right below the building they'd pushed him from. What the hell is going on? He muttered to himself. I'm not in that hospital room, starting the week over. Did I get back to reality? Am I finally out of the loop? And why was I pushed in the first place? I don't remember making any enemies. He looked around, his confusion mounting. Wait a minute. This whole area has changed. Wasn't that a derelict, abandoned shopping plaza over there? Now it's lit up like Times Square. Ethan stared at the distant neon glow, trying to get his bearings. The Riverside Lofts. He owned a small condo here, one he'd bought with the money he'd made from his first book right after college. As he approached the entrance, a familiar neighbor spotted him. Well, I'll be. Ethan Cole. Haven't seen you in a few years. Where'd you go off to strike it rich? Ethan managed a bit of light banter before parting ways. His condo was caked in a thick layer of dust. A notice on the counter warned that his power had been disconnected. Looked like he was roughing it tonight. He'd have to scrub the place down tomorrow and probably replace all the appliances. The mold in the refrigerator was a legitimate biohazard. Just how long have I been gone? He found a power bank in a drawer, and miraculously, it still had a charge. He plugged in his phone, and it slowly came to life. Thankfully, his cell plan was on auto-pay through his bank account. He logged into his power company's website first. The money in his account was still there. In fact, there was quite a lot more than he remembered, likely royalties from his books. After paying the massive overdue balance, the lights flickered on. Once his phone booted up, it exploded with a cascade of notifications. He stared at the date displayed on the screen, stunned. Only 4 years had passed in the real world. For years, he'd been trapped in that repeating week for what felt like millennia. 7 days, over and over again. Every time the week ended, a new loop would begin. Everything reset, except for his memory. Even if he died or was maimed, after 7 days, he was back in that hospital bed, whole again, ready to start over. Scrolling through his missed calls and texts, he noticed a glaring omission. Nothing from his parents. They divorced when he was young, and he'd lived with his grandfather. After his grandpa passed, he hadn't really reached out. They had their own new families. Apparently, their son could vanish for 4 years, and they wouldn't even notice. The one person who hadn't given up was his editor, Ben Carter, or Beans, as Ethan called him. The most recent missed call was from just last night. As Ethan was about to call him back, his phone rang. It was Beans. Dude, my man, where have you been? It's been 4 years, zero contact. I thought you were dead in a ditch somewhere. Sorry, man. I ran into some trouble. Was in a place with no signal. I literally just got back today. It's all good. Just glad you're back. Hey, when you get a chance, check your email. I sent over the royalty statements. Just sign off on them and send them back. And you better call me the second you have a new book ready. You got it. I'll come up to New York and buy you a drink soon. Better make it coffee. My wife has me on a strict no-booze policy. We're trying for a baby. Whoa, Beans, you're married? Congrats, man. That's huge. Hey, I'm sending you something right now. So sorry I missed the wedding. Don't worry about it. Your thoughts are what count. Ethan hung up, opened Venmo, and sent Beans a $2,000 wedding gift. He might have missed the party, but he wouldn't skip the present. Beans accepted it instantly with a fire emoji. They had that kind of friendship. The guy wouldn't have kept calling otherwise. Ethan suspected dialing his number every night had become a habit for him. He scanned the rest of his notifications. Mostly spam. It seemed that in the 4 years he'd been gone, the only person who had missed him was his editor. It was just like college, and just like after graduation. He was a ghost. In the time loop, he had been the only person. Good thing he was used to it. He'd learned to entertain himself, pouring his endless time into mastering every skill imaginable until he reached the absolute pinnacle of each. In the loop, making a fortune in a week had become the easiest game in the world. But now he was back. First things first, he had to clean. He couldn't stand the filth for another second. The next morning, he was jolted awake by the doorbell. He opened it to find a woman in sunglasses and a trench coat, pulling a large suitcase with one hand and holding the hand of a doll-like little girl with the other. They stormed in. Ethan Cole, why has your phone been off? Did you change your number? I came straight here the minute I flew back into the country. He stared. Isabel Croft? I thought you were working overseas. And this is Sophie. Honey, haven't you always wanted to meet your daddy? Isabel said, turning to the little girl. Well, this is him. Daddy, you're so handsome, the girl chirped. Even more handsome than in Mommy's pictures. I was building my career abroad, yes, Isabel explained, her tone softening slightly. But after that night, I found out I was pregnant with Sophie. The doctor told me that with my health issues, if I terminated the pregnancy, I might never be able to have children. So, I had her without telling you. But she's growing up, and she needs a father. So, we came to find you. What a coincidence. He had just returned to the world yesterday. Could it be that his daughter was the reason his time loop had shattered? He remembered it clearly. Isabel, already a huge movie star, had been drugged at an industry party and had desperately fled into his hotel room. He'd been at the same hotel for a writer's conference. As a fan who'd had a massive crush on her in college, the chance to be that close to his goddess was a dream come true. When he tried to take responsibility afterward, Isabel had refused, citing her rising career. Not long after, she'd left the country. Then he'd received that strange phone call, luring him to the roof of that building where he was knocked out and thrown off, plunging him into the time loop. Could his accident have been connected to Isabel? As he held Sophie, his mind drifted, but the little girl in his arms felt so real, so solid. The connection of their shared blood was undeniable. Sophie will stay with you for a few days, Isabel announced, snapping him back to the present. I have a press junket I have to get to. All of her things are in the suitcase. I've never taken care of a kid. Ethan protested. Then learn. Isabel shot back, her voice leaving no room for argument. I didn't know how, either, until I had her. He was speechless. Isabel's commanding presence left him with no choice but to obey. How could he argue? She had given him a daughter. And just like that, she left. What Ethan didn't see was Isabel getting into a black SUV, immediately turning to her agent, Margot, and anxiously whispering, "What if he can't handle her? What if he's not a good father?" Margot patted her hand reassuringly. "Your therapist said Sophie needs a father in her life. Besides, Ethan is her biological dad. They'll figure it out. It's only for a few days. It will be fine." Back in the condo, Ethan was in full-on crisis mode with little Miss Sophie. Thank God he'd scrubbed the place clean last night, but the fridge was completely bare. Sophie hadn't even had breakfast. They really had come straight from the airport. She didn't even know if I'd be home. He grumbled internally. Just showed up on my doorstep. He unpacked Sophie's suitcase in the spare bedroom, which he now realized needed fresh bedding and some toys. The plan was set: take Sophie out for breakfast, then hit a department store and supermarket. The condo needed a serious restock. At a local diner, he discovered Sophie had a mild eating disorder and was incredibly picky. It took half an hour of coaxing just to get a few bites of pancakes in her. It was clear that the first thing he needed to fix was this little girl's appetite. At Target, they first bought home goods, arranging for afternoon delivery. Then they went to the supermarket. Sophie, who had clearly never been to a place like this, looked at everything with wide-eyed wonder. Ethan understood. As a public figure, it would have been hard for Isabel to take her daughter shopping, and a crowded supermarket would have been impossible. He had no such problem. He pushed the cart with Sophie sitting in the child's seat, happily pointing out all her favorite snacks. He checked the ingredient labels on each one. To her credit, Isabel had chosen relatively healthy options. Still, he knew he couldn't rely on processed snacks. He had to win her over with real food. They returned home with armfuls of bags, just as the delivery truck from Target arrived. The workers helped him carry everything inside. With lunchtime fast approaching, he planned to make a simple but delicious meal for his daughter: steak and egg fried rice. He started the rice in the cooker and then began unpacking their haul. Sophie sat at the coffee table in the living room, playing with a new toy he'd bought her. When he emerged, she watched with curiosity as he moved around the open-plan kitchen. She thought her dad's knife skills and the way he whisked the eggs were way cooler and faster than their housekeepers, and the way he tossed the rice in a wok. It was more impressive than any celebrity chef she'd seen on TV. The aroma that wafted from the pan made her stomach rumble. For the first time in a long time, Sophie felt truly hungry. When the steak and egg fried rice was served, she looked at the fragrant, glistening mound in her bowl and thought it looked far too small. 2 small bowls later, she was still asking for more. Ethan was taken aback. Binge eating wasn't good either. Sophie, honey, even though it's delicious, you can't eat until you're stuffed. That's not good for your tummy, he said gently. I'll make you something else amazing for dinner. For now, why don't you walk around the room for a minute? I think you'll find your tummy is already telling you it's full. Isabel had raised a well-behaved child. Sophie listened, walking 2 laps around the living room. Daddy, you're right. My tummy does feel a little full. Good thing I didn't eat a 3rd bowl. Ethan laughed, quickly cleaned the kitchen, and went to join her. After lunch, kids needed a nap. Her bed wasn't set up yet, so Sophie fell asleep on the couch as he told her a fairy tale he made up on the spot. He worked quickly, setting up her new bed and bedding. An hour and a half later, he woke her up and pulled out a workbook on logical thinking that Isabel had packed. A kid not even 4 years old was already doing homework. Life was tough for kids these days, but he couldn't say Isabel was wrong for it. Sophie was incredibly sweet. She woke up without any fuss. He wiped her face with a warm towel, and fully awake, she picked up the workbook and started on it with intense focus. She was clearly used to it. Watching her select the correct answers with practiced ease, Ethan was amazed by her intelligence. At 4, he was pretty sure he'd still been eating dirt. For dinner, he prepared a full spread, 4 dishes and a soup. As they were eating, a FaceTime request came in from Isabel. On the screen, Isabel watched, stunned, as Sophie ate with gusto, too busy to even talk to her mom. Her mouth was constantly filled with the delicious food from the table. This had never happened before. Was Ethan's cooking really that good? Why didn't she ever know he had this skill? She remembered watching the handsome, sunny boy from a foreign college. If she hadn't become a star, forbidden from having a boyfriend, she might have pursued a sweet college romance with him. That night she was drugged. She'd stumbled into his room by chance, thinking it was better him than anyone else. It seemed her instinct to bring Sophie to her father was the right one. Seeing them get along so well, and seeing Sophie's eating issues seemingly vanish. She'd even eaten several bites of vegetables she usually hated. It was clear Ethan's cooking was something special. Her agent called her away, and the call ended. She had only stolen a moment between shoots to check in. After dinner and cleanup, he took Sophie for a walk. The community garden was full of people enjoying the evening, and the basketball court in the distance was brightly lit. Daddy, let's go to the basketball court, Sophie said. In Europe, the place we lived had a court, and people were always playing. Do you like basketball, Sophie? I love it, but they never let me play with them. Don't worry, he said with a smile. Daddy will play with you. At the court, he borrowed a ball from the attendant and started playing with his daughter on the side. For such a little kid, her dribbling was surprisingly skilled. She really did love the game. Her shots, of course, lacked the power to reach the hoop. He made a mental note to buy her a child-sized hoop and ball. To prove he was qualified to be her coach, he put on a little show, sinking shots from every conceivable angle and position with 100% accuracy. It was nothing. The skills he'd honed in the time loop were NBA level. Teaching a little kid was a piece of cake. His flashy moves, however, drew the attention of the guys playing a pickup game nearby. After he effortlessly executed a standing dunk, they couldn't help but come over and beg him to join their game. A few of their girlfriends co-opted Sophie, bribing her with a lollipop. With Sophie happily occupied, he couldn't refuse their enthusiastic invitation. At Sophie's cheering, he joined their game. Their skills were decent for amateurs, but in his eyes, they were full of holes. He didn't even use a fraction of his real ability, but it was enough to make Sophie's cheers grow louder and more excited with every play. After the game, he exchanged numbers with the guys, promising to play again soon, and headed home with Sophie. Bath time presented a new challenge. Thankfully, Sophie was old enough to wash herself. He just had to help her get the water temperature right. But she came out with her hair dripping wet. Luckily, he'd also mastered hairdressing in the loop. With deft, practiced movements, he had her hair perfectly dry and styled in minutes. He'd never been a father in the time loop, but he was a fast learner. After tucking Sophie into bed with a story, he spent the next few hours on his phone, scrolling through parenting blogs and watching videos on how to braid a little girl's hair. His hairdressing skills made it easy. He memorized the techniques after a single viewing. Taking care of a kid he was learning was full of little tricks. His Sophie, apart from her pickiness with food, was an angel compared to some of the hellions in these videos. Isabel, despite her busy schedule, had done a wonderful job. but now he was here to help, and Sophie would be even better cared for. A new day began with Sophie shaking him awake. His promise of a special, homemade breakfast had her up at the crack of dawn. He remembered his new reality. He was a dad now. Making breakfast for his little princess was priority number one. He sprang out of bed, and after they both washed up, he sat her in front of the TV with cartoons while he prepared breakfast. A comforting, stomach-soothing steel-cut oatmeal and the pork soup dumplings he'd promised her last night. He started her with a warm glass of milk first. Thankfully, besides being picky, she had no food allergies. When breakfast was served, his main concern was Sophie burning herself on the hot soup inside the dumplings. He carefully showed her how to nibble a small hole and sip the broth first. She gingerly finished the first one, then eagerly reached for a second. He had cleverly placed each dumpling in an individual foil tartlet cup to make them easier for her to handle. By the time her oatmeal had cooled, she had already eaten 4 dumplings and was reaching for a 5th. So much for the eating disorder, he thought. She's a little foodie. Daddy, the soup dumplings are so yummy. And wow, even the oatmeal is delicious. It's 100 times better than the kind Mommy buys. Watching Sophie devour his cooking filled him with a sense of accomplishment he had never felt, not even once in all his time in the Loop. After breakfast, they headed out. He wanted to explore the city with her and try some of its famous food for lunch. The indoor playground of the mall was filled with Sophie's laughter as they raced go-karts, and she watched in awe as he won prize after prize from the claw machines. In her eyes, her dad was a superhero who could do anything. For lunch, they chose an iconic local diner known for its classic American fare. The signature dishes were decent enough. Sophie ate some with a bit of frown, but only after he promised her an even better homemade dinner that night. After lunch, they found a cat cafe. The large, comfy sofas were perfect for Sophie to take a nap. When she woke up, she could play with the cats under the staff supervision. It beat going home just for a nap. It turned out he wasn't the only one with this idea. An elderly gentleman with a girl about Sophie's age was doing the exact same thing. We exchanged a knowing smile. Both of us had clearly learned this trick online. That afternoon, Sophie made a new best friend, the old man's granddaughter, whose name was also Chloe. They fed the cats together, played with feather wands under a staff member's guidance, and drank juice together when Ethan called them over for a break. The old man, Senator Thompson, was a retired politician. Ethan didn't know his former position, but the senator was remarkably well-spoken and knowledgeable on a vast array of subjects. Fortunately, Ethan's endless education in the Loop meant he could not only keep up, but often contribute deep insights. Senator Thompson, however, was floored. His own broad knowledge came from a lifetime of experience in public service. But this young man, who couldn't be more than 26 or 27, had an incredible depth of understanding in so many specialized fields, some of which the senator himself had only a cursory knowledge of. And he was a stay-at-home dad? The young man claimed to be just a writer, but his intellectual range was astonishing. It was as if there was nothing he didn't know. The 2 girls cried when it was time to leave, only stopping when they promised to meet at the same place tomorrow. Back home, Sophie obediently took out her logic workbook while Ethan got busy in the kitchen. Soon, the aroma of cooking lured her over. He gave the little gourmand a sample of a finished dish to tide her over. Dinner was another feast, and Sophie ate heartily. After cleaning up, she changed into her athletic clothes, grabbed the small basketball he'd bought her, and eagerly pulled him out the door. At the court, he played with Sophie for a while until the guys from last night started to arrive. Soon, another game was underway, with Sophie and a few of the other girlfriends cheering loudly from the sidelines. Sophie was so tired that night, she fell asleep before he could even finish her bedtime story. Isabel's video call went mostly unanswered as Sophie had been too busy playing with her new friend Chloe to talk. This left Isabel feeling annoyed. Just how is Ethan taking care of our daughter? She didn't know it, but Isabel was so agitated she couldn't sleep that night. The moment her morning press event was over, she skipped a scheduled lunch and rushed back. The next morning, they had finished the logic workbook at home. Sophie was watching cartoons while Ethan was in the kitchen. When the doorbell rang, he asked Sophie to see who it was. Isabel swept in and hugged Sophie tightly. She was relieved to see her daughter looking not just fine, but radiant. Her hair was done up in intricate double buns, a style Isabel herself couldn't master, adorned with tiny, shimmering hairpins. She was wearing a beautiful, Chinese-style chiffon dress that made her look absolutely adorable. It wasn't one of the outfits she'd brought. Ethan has good taste, Isabel thought. She entered the living room and saw Ethan busy in the open-plan kitchen. Several exquisitely plated dishes were already on the counter, looking and smelling divine. Suddenly, Isabel realized she was starving. Whatever criticisms she had planned to deliver were completely forgotten as she sat down and found herself in an unspoken eating competition with Sophie. Looking at the beautiful woman and the lovely little girl before him, Ethan felt a deep sense of contentment. If he could just get Isabel to marry him, it would be perfect. Sophie went down for a nap, but not before reminding Ethan to wake her up on time for her playdate with Chloe. Isabel had intended to tell him she was taking Sophie back with her that afternoon, but seeing how things were, she knew Sophie wouldn't leave. So she stayed silent, watching him work in the kitchen from the sofa. A feeling of warmth and domesticity washed over her, and she thought, this is what a home feels like. Relaxing deeply, she drifted off to sleep. When Ethan came out and saw her asleep on the couch, he gently covered her with a blanket. He went to his laptop and started writing down the fairy tales he'd been telling Sophie, refining and expanding on them. At 1:30 p.m., the sound of his door opening was enough to wake Sophie. She quickly washed up and had him fix her hair buns. She wanted to look her best for Chloe. The noise woke Isabel. She saw the blanket on her, smelled the faint, clean scent on it, and smiled. A home felt so warm. Maybe having a man around wasn't so bad after all. Isabel put on sunglasses and a mask to go out with them, but Ethan stopped her. "You're basically wearing a sign that says, 'Look at me,'" he said. He pulled her into a nondescript clothing store and had her change into a simple, casual outfit. He then swapped her designer sunglasses for a pair of black-framed, non-prescription glasses from the counter and gently wiped the makeup from her face, letting her natural, fair skin shine through. She was just as beautiful, but she looked like a different person from the star on screen. At the Cat Cafe, the two girls were right on time. They complimented each other's outfits and hairstyles before happily running off to play with the cats under the staff's watch. Isabel, introduced by Ethan, also met Senator Thompson. The senator's eyes widened slightly. So, Sophie's mother was the famous actress. If it weren't for his past role overseeing media and film censorship, he'd never have recognized her in this disguise. The tabloids all said she was single and had gone abroad to advance her career. And here she was with a child. The old senator was perceptive, however, and could see that the couple's relationship wasn't quite intimate yet, but their love for their daughter was profound. Margot, Isabel's agent, called that afternoon to ask if Isabel was back at her own condo. She needed Isabel to interview the tutors and nannies she had lined up for Sophie. When she found out Isabel was still with Ethan, she complained, saying she shouldn't have entrusted her child to him. But as Isabel watched Ethan interact so naturally and lovingly with Sophie, she felt more certain than ever that she had made the right choice. In the evening, Sophie invited Chloe over for dinner. As it happened, Senator Thompson's wife was out of town and Chloe's parents were on a business trip. He had planned on just getting takeout. But between Sophie's enthusiastic invitation and Chloe's pleading eyes, he couldn't refuse. Luckily, Ethan's fridge was well stocked. Within an hour, he had prepared a feast of 8 dishes and a soup. The meal was a lively affair, with the two little girls spurring everyone on. The generous portions of food were completely devoured. "Ethan, your cooking is simply out of this world," the senator said, patting his full stomach. "Isabel, you are a lucky woman." Isabel felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She wished, suddenly, that every day could be just like this. After sending Chloe and the senator home, Isabel had planned to take Sophie back to her place. But then Sophie emerged, changed into her sportswear, and clutching her small basketball. "Daddy, let's go. The guys are waiting for you." Isabel followed them to the community court and watched in amazement as Sophie was greeted warmly by the other players. Her daughter was popular here. She soon found out why. Ethan stepped onto the court. Today, he joined the opposing team, as everyone wanted to be his teammate. Watching Ethan's performance, Isabel was mesmerized. She soon found herself joining Sophie's impromptu cheerleading squad, shouting encouragement for him just as she had secretly done during his college basketball games. Only now, his skills were on another level entirely. Flawless, powerful, and breathtakingly elegant. She was as captivated as her daughter. On the way home, Sophie was so exhausted she fell asleep on Ethan's back. After Isabel helped give her a bath, Sophie was out for the night. Isabel didn't take her back to her condo. Instead, she stayed, sleeping in the guest room with Sophie, wearing a spare set of Ethan's pajamas. Though Ethan's mind was racing with possibilities, he respectfully returned to his own room and continued writing his fairy tales. This would be the first book he wrote for his daughter, and he hoped that one day she could proudly say she grew up reading her father's stories. The next morning, Isabel was woken by a frantic call from her agent, Margot. Margot's dramatic tone grated on her nerves. Still, the tutors for Sophie needed to be interviewed, so she agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. When Isabel came out to the living room after getting ready, Sophie was already at the dining table, happily eating fresh soy milk, fried dough sticks, and small meat buns. "Mommy, hurry! Daddy's carrot and pork buns are the best." Ethan poured Isabel a cup of red date soy milk. She picked up a small bun, took a bite, and froze. It was heavenly. She never knew a simple bun could taste this good. No wonder Sophie didn't want to leave. If she were honest, she wanted Ethan to cook for her every day, too. "Ethan Cole, how did I never know you could do this?" I have many talents," he said with a smirk. "You're lost for not noticing sooner. You wish, back in college, all you did was write a few novels. There was nothing else to you. You don't say you read my novels?" Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The heroine in all his books was based on her. But her next words put him at ease. She hadn't realized his old secret crush. After breakfast, they went to the cafe. Margot was surprised to see Ethan arrive with Sophie on his shoulders, but was professional enough not to comment. Two teachers were waiting. One was an English tutor. Sophie had grown up abroad, so her spoken English was fluent, but she still needed systematic learning. The other was a humanities tutor, meant to teach her reading, writing, and drawing. Ethan listened for a while and realized he was more qualified than both of them combined. Why pay for tutors? The English teacher was unimpressive, making numerous demands despite her mediocre skills. As someone who was fluent in over a dozen languages, Ethan decided to subtly intervene. He gently corrected her grammar in a way that left her blushing and speechless, earning an admiring look from Sophie. The tutor excused herself in embarrassment. The other tutor, Julia Sinclair, was knowledgeable but had a cold, arrogant demeanor that Ethan felt was unsuitable for Sophie. Worried her personality might rub off on his daughter, he proposed a friendly competition. They competed in penmanship and traditional calligraphy. She conceded defeat in both. Then, they moved to her specialties, sketching and fine-line painting. He outperformed her there, too. Humbled, Julia's arrogance melted away, revealing a passionate student. She insisted on adding him on WhatsApp, eager to introduce him to her mentors and learn from him, declaring his work to be at a master's level. Her sudden, intense admiration and her attempts to get closer to Ethan made Isabel uncomfortable. Sophie, ever her mother's little protector, cleverly wedged herself between Ethan and Julia, blocking her advance. Margot stepped in to politely handle the persistent artist. In the end, Julia left with a piece of his calligraphy. He kept the portrait he had drawn of Isabel and Sophie, but Julia snapped a picture of it to send to her family's group chat. With that, Sophie's education was officially entrusted to Ethan. On the way back, Margot pulled Isabel aside. "Izzy, you hit the jackpot. If you'd known he was this capable, why would you have ever gone abroad? You should have tracked him down the second you found out you were pregnant, but it's not too late. You need to lock this down. Get that ring on your finger. Did you see the way that artist was looking at him?" The second she dropped her pride, she was ready to pounce. Margot's words struck a chord. The Ethan of today was different from the one in college. Not that the old Ethan was bad, but this new Ethan was captivating, brilliant, and deeply attractive. In Julia Sinclair's family group chat, a picture of a painting and a piece of calligraphy caused an uproar. The penmanship is extraordinary. It's a completely new style, the work of a true master. That fine-line painting is on par with the founding masters of the art form, perhaps even superior. And Julia met this prodigy. She said he's only in his 20s. Impossible. That level of skill takes decades of practice to achieve. How could a young man possess such mastery? But when Julia returned with the original calligraphy, all doubts vanished. They were stunned. How could someone so young produce work of this caliber? Julia's own grandfather, the president of the American Fine Arts Guild, admitted he couldn't replicate it. He was desperate to meet the artist. Julia had no choice but to contact Ethan, who was in the middle of telling Sophie a story. They arranged a meeting at the Guild's headquarters for the next day. Sophie insisted on coming along, and Ethan couldn't say no. When Isabel came into the room after her shower, Sophie excitedly told her about the trip to the Arts Guild to watch her daddy write and paint. A faint sense of unease settled over Isabel. That artist, Julia, was being very forward, but she couldn't deny that Ethan's art was truly magnificent. Isabel couldn't sleep that night. Ethan's brilliance was giving her insomnia. What was she supposed to do with all these feelings? She went to the kitchen for a glass of water and found him in the living room, typing on his laptop. She crept closer and watched, mesmerized. His fingers flew across the keyboard. On the screen was one of the stories he had told Sophie, now richer, more intricate, and filled with meaningful lessons. She glanced at the table of contents on the side. It was the 18th story. She stood there for a long time, lost in the moment, watching him package the collection of stories and email them to an editor named Potato. Only then did she realize her feet had gone completely numb. A small sound from behind him made Ethan jump. He spun his chair around, but his sudden movement sent it rolling backward, right into Isabel. Her legs, numb and unresponsive, tangled with the chair, and she stumbled, falling forward directly toward him. He fell back with her on top of him, cushioning her fall. The impact knocked her teeth against his lip, drawing a pinprick of blood. And then, for the first time in 4 years, their lips met. In that instant, all thought vanished. He wrapped his arms around her, ignoring the sting on his lip, and kissed her with a hunger that had been dormant for years. Isabel's mind went blank. She didn't resist. In fact, she found herself melting into it. The moment was shattered by the sound of Sophie crying from her room. Their little princess had wet the bed. Mortified, they scrambled to help Sophie, changing her sheets and bedding in an awkward silence. Once Sophie was settled, Isabel shooed him out of the room. His lips still tingled with the taste of her lipstick, the scent driving him crazy. In the other room, Isabel touched her own lips, her face burning with a blush, a similar feeling of longing echoing within her. Sophie, oblivious, was already fast asleep again. The next morning at breakfast, Isabel was noticeably softer toward him. The defensive armor she'd worn when she first arrived was gone. Today's menu, crab and scallion scramble with toasted sourdough and a savory porridge with preserved egg and pork, was a huge hit. Sophie was already putting in a request for the same thing tomorrow, a request Ethan happily accepted. Cooking for his wife and child was a joy. That morning, Isabel cleared her schedule, telling Margot she was taking the day off. She was going with them to the Arts Guild. The guild was buzzing with activity. Many of its prominent members had turned up, skeptical that a young newcomer could truly be as gifted as the rumors claimed. A few of Julia's admirers were there too, hoping to expose a fraud and win her favor. Julia herself greeted them in the lobby. Ethan noticed her smile tighten for a fraction of a second when she saw the exquisitely dressed Isabel clinging possessively to his arm. He pretended not to notice and cheerfully prompted Sophie to greet her. The pressure of Isabel's arm on his was a silent declaration of ownership. With a flicker of disappointment in her eyes, Julia led them to the elevator. When they stepped out onto the executive floor, a crowd of people swarmed them, and the sudden attention scared Sophie, who buried her face in her father's chest. After Julia's introductions, Ethan couldn't help but notice the strange looks Julia's father and grandfather were giving him. He was a taken man with a wife and child. In the world of art, talk is cheap. Skill is everything. Several of Julia's suitors were lined up, ready to challenge him. It was almost embarrassing. They were no match for him, nor were their mentors. The art world can be complex, but it's also simple. When your talent is so overwhelmingly superior that it inspires despair, everything becomes straightforward. By the end of the day, the guild had acquired several of his new works, calligraphy and paintings in various styles, for a price he simply couldn't refuse. A payment of $20 million hit his bank account, making him feel even more secure. Isabel had never imagined that earning money could be this easy. For lunch, Julia's grandfather treated them to a private kitchen helmed by a world-class chef. Yet, Sophie declared that the food wasn't as good as her daddy's. Her innocent comment, however, caused a bit of trouble. The chef, an old friend of the senator's, came out to greet their table just in time to hear her. In the culinary world, pride is paramount. This chef was at the peak of his career, searching for a breakthrough. To hear a child claim some young dad's cooking was better than his was a direct challenge. Ethan was put on the spot by his daughter's fierce loyalty. But looking at her expectant face, he couldn't let her down. The private kitchen was state-of-the-art. Ethan recognized advanced versions of equipment he'd mastered in the Loop. He decided to replicate the chef's 4 signature dishes. With the superior equipment, he was able to perform at 120% of his ability. The 4 dishes he brought to the table were plated identically to the chef's, but they emitted no aroma. The moment everyone took a bite, however, a stunned silence fell over the table, quickly followed by a frenzied rush to eat, led by Sophie. Incredible, the chef breathed, his eyes wide with disbelief. To lock in all the juice and aroma like this. To elevate a dish to this level of flavor. This is the work of a culinary god. He humbly conceded defeat and begged Ethan to become a consultant for his restaurant. Ethan demurred, suggesting a friendly exchange of ideas instead. By the end of the day, he had made several more influential friends. The chef, after tasting Ethan's versions of his dishes, had a breakthrough of his own. He even managed to make a new dish that Sophie enjoyed. As they were leaving, the chef slipped Sophie a diamond VIP card for his restaurant, telling her to bring her dad back often. That night, Isabel watched the sleeping Sophie, a thought circling in her mind. I don't want to leave him. What do I do? The idea of marriage kept returning, stronger each time. In the following days, a new routine formed. Isabel would work on her projects during the day and return to Ethan's place at night. Her assistant had already brought over more of her clothes and personal items. Suddenly, Ethan felt his condo was too small. It was time to buy a house. Beans came to see him to sign a supplementary contract. His fairy tale collection had become a massive bestseller, and Beans had negotiated a much higher royalty rate for him. When Beans saw Sophie, he was dumbfounded. Now I get why you disappeared for all those years, and here I was thinking I beat you to the altar. Turns out you already have a daughter this old. Seeing a picture of Isabel and Sophie, however, a look of understanding dawned on his face. The pressure of being married to a superstar must be immense. Little did Beans know, he had beaten Ethan to the altar. The marriage certificate was still missing. But with Isabel growing closer every day, and with Sophie as his ultimate advantage, Ethan was confident it was only a matter of time. That evening, Sophie told Isabel all about Uncle Beans and the contract, and how her daddy had earned a lot more money. In response to Isabel's questioning look, Ethan explained about the book's success. It had become a phenomenon, a must-have for parents everywhere. He even showed her the author's copy Beans had brought. Sophie grabbed the book and asked him to teach her to read. He started with phonics, but the book was full of his own hand-drawn illustrations, which kept her completely engaged. Watching them, the word marriage once again surfaced in Isabel's mind, not just for Sophie's sake, but for her own. She was finding it harder and harder to imagine her life without him. Isabel hadn't stayed a single night in her own villa since she returned, only going back to pick up things. Under Ethan's guidance, Sophie quickly learned her phonics and could now read the fairy tale book on her own. Her fine motor skills were still developing, so her daily writing practice was short. Ethan would patiently guide her hand, teaching her the strokes for a few characters. She could already write her own name, Sophie, with a certain flair. Her conversational English with Ethan was fluent, and she'd mastered phonetic spelling, easily reading the English picture books Ethan created just for her. Recently, he'd even started teaching her conversational French, and she was picking it up with astonishing speed. Her drawing skills were still nascent, but Ethan was endlessly patient. Whenever her drawing went awry, he would gently take her hand and help her fix it, teaching her new techniques. She was now a budding artist. 3 months passed. 2 of Isabel's new movies were released in the U.S., and public interest in her surged. Paparazzi started lurking around Ethan's condo complex. For Sophie's sake, Ethan decided it was time to buy a villa, preferably one they could move into immediately. Coincidentally, the realtor showed him a property that Sophie absolutely loved, right next door to the villa Margot had bought for Isabel before her return. One was 9 Lakeside Drive. The one he was buying was number 8. Both properties were private and backed onto a man-made lake. A gate in the garden wall between them could easily connect the two. He didn't know it was Isabel's house when he bought it. She had never lived there, so the neighbors didn't know who owned it. Isabel only discovered the ridiculous coincidence when she came to tour his new home. But it was a blessing in disguise. It gave the famous actress a perfect way to dodge the paparazzi. She could return to her own home and then slip through the garden into Ethan's, completely hidden from view. Still, for extra security and at Margot's urging, they went to get a marriage license. It was mainly for Sophie's sake. She needed to be officially registered to enroll in kindergarten. Right before they went to City Hall, Isabel ran into Jenna King, her old college roommate and rival from their early audition days. They had been close once, but their paths diverged when Isabel went abroad and Jenna married into a wealthy family. Now, Isabel was an international star, while Jenna had just gone through a bitter divorce, leaving with nothing. The meeting was no accident. Jenna had orchestrated it, hoping to use Isabel's nostalgia and sympathy to launch her own comeback. But when she learned Isabel was about to marry Ethan, Jenna's jealousy flared. She had always been in Isabel's shadow, a supporting character in the story of Isabel's success. The wealthy man she married had originally been interested in Isabel, and Jenna had been the one to drug her all those years ago, a secret she had carefully buried. After Isabel left the country, Jenna got her wish and married into the family. But her life was miserable. Her husband was a philanderer and her mother-in-law despised her. Now, seeing Isabel's happiness, Jenna was consumed with envy. And Ethan, she remembered him from college as a scholarship kid, utterly unremarkable. How did he survive? Her ex-husband had arranged for him to be pushed from that roof. Why was he still alive? No, I can't let them get married, she thought. Why does Isabel get to have everything? Izzy, you're a huge star, Jenna said, feigning concern. Getting married so suddenly could hurt your career. And are you sure about this Ethan guy? You should be careful. He was just a poor kid back in school. So he wrote a few books. He has no stable income. Aren't you afraid he's just after your money? Jenna's words made Isabel frown. She knew firsthand how brilliant Ethan was. Making money was as easy as breathing for him. His art was worth millions. His cooking could command exorbitant prices, and his fluency in multiple languages made him a top-tier translator. And she suspected that was just the tip of the iceberg. Was Jenna really looking out for her? A seed of doubt, a tiny thorn, was planted in her heart. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Isabel found Ethan in the living room and told him about her conversation with Jenna. He didn't remember Jenna well, but he did remember she was with Isabel at the party the night she was drugged. He had his suspicions but kept them to himself. You haven't been in touch with her for years, he said gently. You don't know what she's been through. But I've always believed that people who seem pitiful often have a hateful side. She seems like the type who can't stand to see others do better than her. It's probably best to keep your distance. Isabel knew he was right. He then brought up the move, and she agreed. The paparazzi presence was going to be too much. Ethan handled the entire move, hiring a professional company to pack and transport everything. The next day, he and Sophie were settling into the new house, which was already fully furnished. Sophie's room was a fairy tale princess fantasy, decorated exactly to her wishes. The new housekeeper and staff arranged everything perfectly. He put his old condo on the market. No sooner had the condo sold than he got a call from his mother. She was in town with her husband and their son for a vacation and wanted to stay with him to save on hotel costs. When he got the call, they had already shown up at his old address and gotten into an argument with the new owner who had called security on them. With Isabel out of town for work, he had no choice but to take a reluctant Sophie, who didn't want to be left with the housekeeper, and drive out to meet them. When he arrived, his mother immediately started berating him for moving without telling her, completely ignoring the fact that she had shown up unannounced. When they got in the car, Sophie sweetly greeted them as Grandma, Grandpa, and Uncle. The family, however, gave her a cold stare. A fire of rage ignited in Ethan's chest. He didn't take them to his new home. Instead, he checked them into a family suite at a nearby hotel. As he was about to leave with Sophie, his mother stopped him. "Ethan, sit down. I need to talk to you." "Go on," he said, pulling Sophie onto his lap. "Your brother, Ryan, got into UCLA. We were hoping he could live with you during the school year. You could look after him." "Hold on," he cut her off. "First of all, I sold my old place. Where I live now is on the opposite side of the city from UCLA. It's too far. Second, I've been on my own since I was 10. No one looked after me when I was in school. Ryan is 18. He can't take care of himself. Besides, my daughter is my priority now." "What's the big deal about a girl?" his stepfather interjected. "Your brother was the valedictorian of his entire city. If your son is so brilliant, then he shouldn't have any problem taking care of himself. What do you need me for?" Ethan shot back, struggling to keep his voice down for Sophie's sake. "You're here for a vacation, and out of respect for the fact that she gave birth to me, I'll be civil. But you never took care of me. What gives you the right to demand I take care of your son?" Sophie sensed his anger and wrapped her small arms tightly around his neck, pressing her face to his ear. "Don't be angry, Daddy," she whispered. "Sophie will take care of you." Her words broke him. Tears welled up in his eyes. The other three fell silent. He wiped his eyes and stood up, holding Sophie close. "I've paid for the room for a week. That's enough time for your trip. You can charge meals to the room. The deposit will cover it. And don't contact me again. As for Mom's alimony, a lawyer will be in touch when she turns 50. He walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. As he was getting into his car, he received a text from his half-brother, Ryan. "Bro, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop them. Don't blame Mom. It was my dad's idea." Ethan thought for a moment and replied, "It's fine. Enjoy your vacation. Call me if you need anything." Ryan's reply came instantly. "Thanks, bro. Say hi to my little niece for me. I'll get her a present next time." Ethan smiled. His brother was a good kid. Before they left town, they all had one last meal together. Ryan had bought Sophie an expensive doll set, and the two of them played happily. His mother and stepfather, clearly chastened by Ryan, were on their best behavior. Just as that drama ended, his father called. He and his young girlfriend were getting a divorce after 5 years. She had been cheating on him. "You ignore me for years, and then call me to use me as your personal therapist?" Ethan said, exasperated. "You made your bed, now lie in it. I don't have the time or the energy to deal with your messes. The money you spent on her handbags is more than you ever spent on me. Go cry to one of your other girlfriends. And don't offer me money. I don't want it. Donate it to charity." Hanging up, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The shadows of his childhood had been healed by the endless time in the loop, but now his unreliable parents no longer held any power over him. Sophie and Isabel were the only family he needed to protect. Getting the marriage license was quick and easy. The clerk at City Hall was thrilled to see a celebrity, but was happy to sign an NDA after a generous tip. Isabel had recently signed on for a reality show, a laid-back series where celebrities participated with family members, showing a different side of themselves. Coincidentally, Jenna King was also on the show, joining as the new, official girlfriend of one of the regular hosts, the A-list actor Liam Stone. Meanwhile, online gossip about Isabel's secret child and cohabitation was escalating, clearly fueled by a deliberate smear campaign. Paparazzi photos and security footage from the old condo were leaked. People from the basketball court confirmed the photos were real. Soon, pictures of Ethan and Sophie were all over the internet. Fortunately, they were already legally married. With Margot's help, they issued a public statement, shutting down the speculation with a picture of their marriage certificate. But the attackers just changed their target. Now, they were painting Ethan as a gold digger, unworthy of Isabel. He didn't care about the online hate, but Isabel did. So, she decided to do the show to set the record straight. She was slated to be a surprise guest, so she and Jenna were unaware of each other's participation. On the day of the shoot, Margot stayed home to look after Sophie. The show was broadcast live, so they could watch on TV. The show's regulars were Liam Stone, the pop queen Aria Vance, and the basketball star Jalen Jet Carter. Liam's partner was his new girlfriend, Jenna. Aria brought her younger sister, Chloe. Jalen was with his wife. Then, the surprise guests were announced. Ethan and Isabel stepped out of a black SUV. Isabel's goal for the show was simple: to show the world who her husband really was. She would not let him be slandered as a kept man. When Jenna saw Isabel walk out, holding Ethan's hand, her face contorted with jealousy. "Our guests need no introduction, but Izzy, you have to tell us about the handsome man by your side," the host teased. "This is my husband, Ethan Cole," Isabel said, beaming. "The father of my child that the internet is so obsessed with." "So, what does he do, this man who managed to snag a beauty like you?" another guest chimed in. "We were actually college classmates," Isabel explained. "He was already a well-known online author back then, writing under the pen name Huanyan. You know the popular fairy tale series, Sophie's Bedtime Stories? My husband wrote them." "No way. Your husband is Huanyan," Aria's sister, Chloe, exclaimed. "The one who wrote that amazing collection?" She pulled a copy of the second volume from her bag and rushed over. "Huanyan Dashan, can you sign this for me?" Ethan smiled at the enthusiastic young fan. He signed the book, adding a personal note of encouragement at her request. "Wow, his handwriting is beautiful," the host said, motioning for the camera to zoom in. The shot lingered on the elegant script, and the live viewer count skyrocketed. "Director, we just broke 7 million viewers," a producer yelled. Isabel's appearance had pushed them to 6 million. Her husband's identity reveal and a simple signature had added another million. What the director didn't know was that Sophie's Bedtime Stories had been endorsed by the Department of Education as a top choice for early reading. Nearly every family with a young child owned a copy. The floodgates were just beginning to open. Online, fans of both Isabel and Huanyan went wild. The ship name Ethabel started trending worldwide. The show's viewership exploded. Jenna watched their loving interactions, her jealousy curdling into rage. Her smear campaign, the leaked photos, the paid-for-security footage, all of it had been rendered useless by a marriage certificate and a single TV appearance. Ethan was no longer a gold digger. He was a beloved author. The first competition was a talent showcase. After a few song and dance numbers from the other couples, it was Ethan and Isabel's turn. They performed a sword dance. Isabel played a haunting melody on a zither, while Ethan moved through a powerful, ancient sword form, radiating the aura of a victorious general. The performance was a breathtaking display of strength and tender romance. The live chat went insane. "My brother-in-law definitely knows ancient martial arts. That sword dance was insane. He could probably deflect rain." The viewer count shattered 10 million. Jenna was fuming. But the next segment was a calligraphy and painting challenge, a segment Liam had pushed for specifically for her. She had studied traditional art for years and considered herself a master. The other couple's attempts were amusing but clumsy. Then, Liam and Jenna presented their work. It was impressive, clearly the result of years of practice. As they were soaking in the praise, the host let out a gasp from Ethan and Isabel's station. Everyone crowded around. On the table was a stunning painting of lotus flowers on rice paper. The leaves were lush, the crimson blossoms vibrant. In the clear water below, small fish swam peacefully. It was a picture of a summer pond teeming with life. The central focus was a pair of twin lotus blossoms on a single stalk, a powerful symbol of marital love and devotion. Next to it, written in a script that was both elegant and powerful, was a short poem titled My Love for the Lotus, expressing a deep and singular devotion. The entire piece, from the art to the words to the artist's seal, which read, "The Scholar of Huanyan," radiated a master's touch. For those in the know, the seal was a major clue. Rumors have been swirling about a mysterious new senior advisor at the American Fine Arts Guild, a master of countless art forms who had bested all their top members. His works were priceless, and his identity a closely guarded secret, but his seal was recognizable. A few minutes after the seal appeared on screen, the internet broke. The Guild's nearly 10 million members flooded the live stream, crashing the servers for 2 full minutes. The show's producers, unable to find anyone on set qualified to critique the work, called the Guild for an expert opinion. The expert who answered took one look at the seal and stammered, "I am not qualified to critique the work of our senior advisor. No one at the Guild is. The fact that he graced your show with a piece of his art is a gift." The statement was broadcast live. The Ethabel ship went into a frenzy. Ethan's new identity dominated the headlines. The Arts Guild then released high-definition photos of 30 more of his works on their website, which also promptly crashed. Isabel was the happiest person in the world. In front of millions, Ethan had declared his singular love for her. The unhappiest was Jenna. She had been so sure this segment would be her moment to shine. How could this nobody, Ethan, possess such talent and status? After a quick lunch, the competition continued with a 3-on-3 basketball game against Jalen Carter and 2 of his pro teammates. Everyone expected it to be a blowout. No one expected Ethan to be a basketball prodigy. He was stronger, faster, and more skilled than the professional players, single-handedly dominating the court. He moved like a super-powered tank, turning the game into his personal highlight reel. For the final play, he launched himself into the air for a thunderous dunk that made Isabel feel like she was back in college. Overjoyed, she rushed onto the court and leaped into his arms. The live audience erupted. Skeptics cried foul, but the team's head coach, who was providing commentary, confirmed that Ethan's skills were absolutely legitimate, NBA level. The more talented Ethan appeared, the more his and Isabel's fans celebrated. Back at the house, Sophie was too excited to nap, chattering away to Margot about her dad's basketball skills. Margot marveled at the man. Was there anything he couldn't do? Probably just give birth, she mused. The final segment was a cooking challenge. Each team had to prepare 4 dishes. This was usually the most disastrous and hilarious part of the show. While the others chose simple, familiar recipes, Ethan and Isabel selected a wide variety of complex ingredients. Ethan gently shooed Isabel out of the kitchen, where only a camera crew was allowed. The director and the audience watched, mesmerized, as Ethan showcased breathtaking knife skills and an almost supernatural speed and precision. In an hour and a half, he prepared 8 representative dishes from 8 different world cuisines, plus a dessert. His plating was more exquisite than a Michelin-starred chef's. The cameraman complained over the radio that the aroma was making him drool. The unedited footage was broadcast live, and the entire audience collectively felt their stomachs rumble. Foodie fans started analyzing his techniques in the live chat, their comments becoming the official commentary. The Ethabel fans were ecstatic. Another one of their heroes' secret identities was revealed. When the food was brought out, the other team's dishes were completely ignored. Ethan's creations were so magnificent, the staff was practically drooling. He ended up making 2 giant woks of Yangzhou fried rice just to satisfy everyone. After the shoot, the cast and crew enthusiastically saw them off. In the car, Isabel immediately video-called Sophie, worried she hadn't eaten. "He left prepared meals for us," Margot said over the phone. "I just had to heat them up. And my God, Izzy, your husband's cooking is divine." Suddenly, Ethan slammed on the brakes, and the phone flew out of Isabel's hand. She looked up to see their car boxed in by 3 vans on a deserted stretch of road near a construction site. "Call 911. Lock the doors. Don't get out," Ethan said calmly before stepping out of the car. Isabel did as she was told, her heart pounding. On the other end of the video call, Margot was already dialing, while Sophie started to cry. Outside, men swarmed out of the vans, brandishing bats and pipes, and charged at Ethan without a word. Isabel watched in shock as the gentle, graceful movements she'd seen in practice turned into a brutally efficient fighting style. Anyone he hit went down and stayed down. When he disarmed 2 of them and took their weapons, the fight turned into a rout. He was no longer the one being surrounded. He was hunting them. The gentle, doting father had a fierce, formidable side she had never seen. When the police arrived, they found a bizarre scene. One handsome man holding 2 pipes, standing over 3 neat rows of kneeling thugs, who were all singing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" in unison. In the car, a beautiful woman was calmly reassuring a little girl on a video call that her daddy was just playing a game to help her sleep. The police had never seen anything like it. Under questioning, the gang leader cracked immediately, implicating Jenna and her ex-husband, who were arrested that same night. The leader also confessed to being the one who had pushed Ethan from the roof 4 years ago. Jenna was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Her ex-husband got 10. That night, Ethan and Isabel's life together truly began. Their days that followed were filled with the love and blessings of their fans. And when Sophie turned 6, they gave her a little brother. The end.